guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am I. My name is Joshua Ansley, and I am here to serve you. So today we're going to talk about being of service and what that is. Actually, let's talk about what being service is not. Being of service is not giving everything of yourself until you absolutely have nothing left and are completely depleted and broken. All right. I mean, it could be if that's a system you want to go to. I'm not going to get into that idea or the concept of that. But what I'm talking about is when we get into an understanding of service. An understanding of service is an attitude of service. It's an attitude with which we can approach any action in this life. Every synapse that fires, every thought that happens can be a thought moving towards service to that higher space, right? Now, there's this idea of giving everything you fucking have. Service is not the only answer. It's not the only clue. And matter of fact, when we actually work through a lot of things, then we're able to be of service more, because the relationship to self, as I always talk about, has to come first, right? So that relationship to self, the capital S self, right, is a relationship where when you relate into that space, that is that infinite source, that there is nothing to be depleted, that it is an infinite source. The more you relate as that space and connect into that space, the more you're able to give, right? So when you start being of service, it's actually part of that process, because when you start being of service to other people, you start to basically recognize the divinity in these other people. But that's why I say there's some catches here, right? So I want to make sure that we're not talking about giving until we break. I want to make sure that we're not talking about codependent behavior. I want to make sure that we're not talking about giving recklessly, right? And just giving and giving and giving, and what we think we're doing is supporting is actually destroying, right? This happens a lot with addiction, you know, and families of addicts and things like that, thinking they're being supportive when they're actually doing the worst possible thing. Or blatantly, you know, very obviously, if you go out onto the streets and you give a heroin addict money, is that really going to be of service to them? Is that really going to be doing benefit to them? So we have to make discernments about what service we're giving, right? But it really comes back to also what is serving you. Because if you're in some sort of relationship where you're constantly giving, 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 and receiving nothing back, it's not necessarily that we're giving in order to get back, but understanding that if we look at it from a chakra perspective, the first chakra, Muladhara, is relationship to self. Each one has a relationship, right? If we do not have our relationship to self in order, the rest will be a mess. So I believe you actually have to develop a healthy ego in order to get past your ego. Because if you do not have a healthy sense of ego, then as you're trying to surpass your ego, all you'll really be doing is tearing yourself down. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to lift ourselves up into higher places, right? So destroying the ego is not about the space of tearing ourselves down. It's actually about identifying with a higher sense of self, so that we don't need that validation from things, right? We don't need that validation from our actions. We don't need that validation from others. And this is where then, the more we move into that space of relating to the world through that infinite source of self, from that steady, grounded space. So when we do the work to take care of ourselves first, we have to take care of ourselves first before we can help others, right? Now, there is a transition there, right? So because service is actually quite selfish. Good service is going to benefit both parties. Both parties will be uplifted by good service, right? So understanding that if you are in a codependent relationship or an abusive relationship and you're just giving, you hear you should just give, and maybe the one day you're thinking that you're going to eventually get back, that is not benefiting both parties, because it's not benefiting you. And ultimately, it's really not benefiting the other person either. The same thing with addiction and things like that. If you're just giving, it's not benefiting either party, right? So it has to benefit both parties. And it's an attitude of service where any action can then be taken into service, right? So let's take your job, right? You work, maybe you don't love your job, maybe you fucking hate your job, right? But it's an attitude that we start to work in that space. Now, you know you're going to get paid. If you're not getting paid for your job, that's a different story. Now we have to understand what that is, and that's a whole nother issue, right? But you know that your paycheck is going to come in. So if you're only going to work to get that paycheck, you are going to be fucking miserable. It's about changing your relationship to things. if you can change your relationship and start working in a sense of service, in a sense of selfless service, it will change your everything. It'll change the way you're relating to the whole world. It'll stop from this into open into flow, right? So it has to move into that space in order to happen. But it also has to start small, I believe, right? So understanding that you don't have to go out and change the world tomorrow, because this idea is that you have to push and you have to go and you have to succeed and all this kind of stuff, and then have your business be of service, and like entrepreneurs and like, yes, you know, like, whoa, take it easy. Let's just scale it down. Let's just take it easy, folks, all right? Because again, we have to take care of ourselves and build ourselves up. Get that self-love into a space. The more we connect, I think the answer for everything is connecting into that infinite space of a higher power within yourself. It doesn't matter if you think it fucking exists or not. Stop standing in your own way. Just understand that as you step into this psychology of moving into the mind, gauging it towards that space of infinite love and that infinite space of being able to give, the more you connect into that, the more you're able to give. The more you are filled up and you're overflowing, and there is nothing but to give from that space, right? It's kind of like like breath, all right? It's also just an awareness that you are constantly being of service. You are constantly of service with every breath that you take. So observe this breath that comes in every single inhale that you take, right? When you exhale, you get to the bottom of your exhale, you're not worried about that receiving coming back. It's just going, you know it's going to come back. So this is an understanding that understanding karma and the law of cause and effect. It's not some mystical thing either. It's law of cause and effect. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if you're going to work, you will yield something. If you go into work with an attitude of service, Jimmy Iovine, right, is a great producer. He, works with Dr. Dre and co-owns Beats and all that kind of stuff, and multi-billionaire or whatever. He talks about the way he succeeded was a being of service. Now, he was able to be of service because he was able to step out of his own way and think, well, I deserve more, I deserve this and that and that and that and that, right? I deserve entitlement space. Now, if he's being utterly abused in a space, now it's getting yourself into a space where you are loved and respected within yourself, right? So that you will not tolerate that behavior, but you'll be able to serve. You'll be able to serve from that space of not thinking that you're better than. You'll move into a space of being able to serve, and then people will recognize that, and people will want to give back, and that reciprocation will happen, right? But if you give from this sense of low self-worth and think that you're actually entitled, and that's just the mind telling you that you're entitled to more, as opposed to a true sense of self-worth, which you will know your worth, and you will then work into a higher space of still being able to be of service in the greatest degree possible, right? So if we look at this breath, we look at the flow of breath, the breath does not ask for anything back. It just constantly gives, right? And just by you being alive, you are being of service. You're exhaling, and it's taking care of these trees. It's bringing life to this planet. And then they exhale whatever, what they consider toxins, right? That oxygen, which they consider toxins, and it's breathed in by other people. So you are being of service just by being alive on this planet. So we just ease into a sense of that. We don't have to come into a sense of service of trying to do everything and create an empire, right? And drive, grind, all that kind of stuff. That's actually, if we've talked about the gunas before, it's the process moves from the tamasic to rajasic to sattvic. So even within your action, when you take action from service, when you go with an attitude of service, your action becomes cleansed, it becomes clean, it's free, it's open, it's not restricted. You're not a servant in some way that you're subjugated. What you're actually doing is subjugating that mind and that body to a higher aspect of yourself. And if you're serving someone else, you're serving the divinity within them. So the more you start to serve in this space, and again, that's why you need to be aware of who you're serving and why you're serving. Just be aware of that within yourself, because it really could be a codependent space, or it could be a real dysfunctional space, right? So understand what's healthy for you, and that's why the work is always coming back to that self-care of knowing what you can and what you cannot give, understand your healthy boundaries, and slowly start to give more and more by tapping into that infinite space of love, and see how taken care of you are in every single breath. And see how every single move that you make is there's something serving you. So what can you give back? What can you give back in this life through your action, through your mental attitude of giving back, of serving, of gratitude that makes you then want to give back, so that your action then is detached from the outcome. So even if you're using it for a sense of success, if you want to be successful, instead of moving into some fucking grind, which there's going to be grinding happening, it's going to happen. But even how you relate to the grind, if you relate to the grind is that you are not your emotions, you are not your body, you are not this mind, you are not defined by your success or your failure, you're not defined by any of that, then you can just take action, that sattvic action, that pure action, that is a space of just being of service. And I promise you, you will find happiness. It is the most uplifting thing you could possibly experience, just to be of service. And the more you humble yourself and that mind-body to that higher space, and you see what serves you so that you can serve a higher space in your life. The more you do that, it will transform your life. In Lakesh Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?